These are the new V2 aluminum cranks from RNC BMX. They come with a new design, new options, and a new lower price tag of $200 for the entire set. I recently uploaded my unboxing video showing these cranks off, but not going super in depth. And in this video, I'm gonna give you those in-depth details as well as put them on my bike. But before we get to that, I teased something in the unboxing video that came in this package. And here it is. It's pretty obvious what we're looking at here, but before we get to this, I want to give anybody who hasn't seen the unboxing video the information that they need. So these cranks, if you look at them, are machined from a solid piece of 70/50 aluminum. This has an 80,000 tensile strength, which according to the website is the same as 70/75, but it's much more tough and impact resistant. So that's something to know about these. And a huge difference here is that these have pinch bolts, which has an advantage that somebody pointed out in the comments of the unboxing video that I never even considered, but has me extremely stoked. So while we get to taking these old cranks off, let's just keep talking and go through this. So one big difference between these V1s and the V2s, aside from the obvious huge differences in the design, is that as we take this bolt off of here and we take a look at the newer bolt, I know it's not totally in focus here, but you'll be able to see the difference that I'm talking about when we pull this over here. So check this out. This is the old style, this is the new. This required a tool that was sent with each set of cranks or a 12mm Allen. These new ones are just a 6mm Allen, which I think is an improvement because it makes it so anybody should be able to borrow a 6 from anybody else who rides BMX and might have one and tighten their cranks, whereas I don't know a lot of BMX riders that have either that custom tool or a 12mm. Another difference is that these are titanium, these are aluminum, and while titanium is awesome in everything, aluminum is actually lighter. So for a use case like this, it ends up being better. And I just realized something that I'm gonna wanna do before I ever take these cranks off of this bike is loosen the pedals, because pedal loosening is something that, let's just say, it can be difficult. So when the bike is right side up, your pedals tighten towards the front, which means we need to go towards the back, and just hope that me wrenching on these the other day wasn't too much. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Whew. They weren't gonna come loose. I'm sure there's lots of camera bumping going on there, but yeah, they definitely weren't coming loose anytime soon. That's for sure. There we go. Pedal number 1 loose. Oh, yeah, baby. Whew. Yeah, good thing I did that before taking the cranks all the way off. But it is a good reminder that even putting grease on the pedals, they can stay tight. So now we can go ahead and pull off crank arm number 1. And honestly, I guess I didn't even need to take both sides all the way off. That's fine. Take off the spacers. How do I want to Yo, not bad. So one thing about these new cranks is that the spindle that I got with these, I got the 48 spline 24 mil, which means a different adapter, and hammering on this just now knocked the old adapter out of my sprocket, which means I'll be able to put the new one in much easier than I anticipated. I had no idea how easy it would actually come out. So good thing there. Now we got to get these cranks the rest of the way off. All right, so I'm to the point now where my spindle is almost coming out of the other side. And what I want to make sure I do here is I want to make sure that I put the new spindle in at the same time so that I can't remember if I have extra spacers or anything inside this bottom bracket. And if I do, I want to make sure that I am ready to have them go straight on to the new spindle so I don't have to try to line things up. So I'm gonna go ahead and put the new bolt into the new spindle and then start to hammer it in here. Yes, okay. So it's already coming out of the other side. And get the spindle so that it's centered in the bottom bracket. And the spindle itself is made from 6AL4V titanium, which is both heat treated and aged. And according to the website, it says it has 170,000 tensile strength, and the pinch bolts inside these crank arms are the same. So I'm gonna have to figure out between right and left which goes on which. But before I can do any of that, I need to go get the grease so I can make sure I grease this up really well. The grease has been acquired. Shout out to Park Tool Polylube 1000. And why don't you guys tell me that the bike got super far away from the camera there? Jeez. Grabbed the non-drive side spacer to toss onto the other side. And now I'm going to put the grease on. Pretty self-explanatory process. I just want to make sure that we don't get any cold welding going on. I never had to deal with that issue on any of the other RNC stuff between pedals and cranks being different types of metal, or the previous aluminum cranks between the spindle being titanium and the aluminum crank arms themselves. One thing I want to say too that I make sure I say in this video is that RNC has now developed a titanium pedal thread insert. So on future sets of cranks, there will be a titanium insert on the inside for your pedal threads, in case you are worried about that. So that is something that is new and exciting. Now, I have my exact same spacing. I should be able to just rock the exact same spacers and setup on this, I'm hoping. Oh, let's see. So the sprocket can go on. Maybe. Looks like I may have to hit it through just a tiny bit more. Should be fine. That's gonna work now. Okay, so spacer lining up on the sprocket with the new spacer. Dude, I'm thrilled with how easy that was. That just went on by hand and it's solid. So now all I have to do is put on the crank arm. But one thing that I'm not totally sure on, I think the spacing should be exactly the same. I just didn't measure. Let's see, let's use the hammer. This is the least scientific measurement of a spindle ever, but you know what? It's exactly what I thought. It was from one reference point to another. So the other question would be, is the crank arm the exact same thickness? And it looks to be extremely close. And I guess I've made you guys wait long enough to tell what this is. Let's focus in here so you can see. Obviously, this is a cross section of one of these cranks, but there's some things you can notice in here. One, you can see how thick these triangle braces actually are, and two, you can see from this angle that the inside part is thickest at the boss for the spindle, and then it gets thinner and it's just a straight line. If you look at this, it's just a straight line and it's thinner at the pedal boss, but it's still the exact same thickness up here that all of these braces are. And so it was just a really cool way for RNC to send this and for you to get a visual representation of what the insides and the depths on these actually are, as well as how much material is here for the pinch bolts. I thought it was pretty cool and just something that is a nice visual aid there. So pretty cool. Anyways, let's keep going here. I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put on the left side first. So I need to find my left side pedal. That is right. We gotta find, oh, neat. All right, so here's another thing that I just noticed that Ryan at RNC was probably laughing at me for. Right here on the crank arm, there's an L. Then right here on this crank arm, there's an R for left and right. So it's very easy to figure out which is which here. Oops. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and tighten this pedal on and check my focus quick. I'm not exactly worried about the grease on this pedal just because there's so much on the threads already. Tighten this down real good. When it comes to the pinch bolts, the size is actually a 5 and it's easy enough, but I want to make sure you guys can see this whole thing, so we're going to migrate to the other side of the bike real quick. All right, so we find ourselves on the other side of the bike where I'm going to try to carefully line this crank arm up with where I think it needs to go and then just slide it onto the spindle. I already greased the inside, so all I really need to do now is tighten this bolt in. If I can get it started here. There we go. It says made in the USA on it. And yeah, comes with these. The weight on a set of these cranks with a 5.65 inch spindle and in 165 is, I believe, 21.3 ounces. Oh God. I realized I probably shouldn't have tightened it all the way because it still has to go to the other side some, but for now we got this side handled, and let's see if we can just yeah, close enough. Let's move to the other side. So a couple quick things here before we toss this other side on. You probably have a couple questions. One of those might be, well, what about these gigantic pedals that you unboxed? RNC is currently working on a slim version of these pedals that will be in aluminum with sealed bearings and everything. So they'll just be a bit thinner. The XL version, I think, will be available as well as the large version. So he's gonna send a set of those for me to test out. And he told me with these ones right here, these magnesium pedals with the gnarly spindle and everything, to maybe do a giveaway or something. So if you think I should give these away, let me know in the comments down below. And if everyone's down, maybe we'll have to make that happen with the future videos with these pedals that are coming in. So now I have pre-greased the outside, inside, everywhere that we need on these. And we can just go ahead and line everything up here. This is one of the convenient factors of the pinch bolt, is that it's a smoother install process that I just now realized I need to make sure I get the right sides onto here. So let's see, these go on first. And now I should have my same exact spacing as before. There we go. I could probably honestly even get rid of one of those, but I want to check my fitment here first. And as you can see, looking from the top, there is so much room here on this side. And on the other side, we have so much room as well. I don't know that I would want to get rid of a spacer here. And if we look inside there, I have a bit of room, but keep in mind that the other side is all the way against as far as it can possibly go. So we have a bit of room that we could pull that out. So now we can put the bolt in here, but before we do that, something I just noticed is that these new bolts are a little bit longer than the previous. I know it's out of focus, but you can still tell that this new bolt is longer than the previous, which means you'll be able to get a bite on the spindle much sooner with it further out. So you'll be able to install easier this way. And what I want to do now, before we go tightening anything fully or tightening the pinch bolts, is I want to let a little bit out on this other side, just so that we can even up the spindle in both sides. That's something that you want to always make sure that you do whenever you're installing your cranks, no matter if you have pinch bolts or whatever your setup is. You just want to make sure that your spindle's centered in your bottom bracket and your frame, and that your spindle is also centered in your cranks, because you want to have even spacing between the two just to ensure that everything is where it should be. So this is where we get to a aspect of the pinch bolt that I didn't even consider until this person on the screen right now left a comment basically saying that the pinch bolts allow you to keep your bolts tight but not have them super tight, which means that if you like to do crank flips, you can make sure everything is as tight as it needs to be without the ability to come loose while still being able to do crank flips. Whereas with just the normal press-on cranks that we know in BMX, those can come loose if they're not tight enough. I know it sounds stupid to say, but sometimes you do have to crank on these bolts and make sure that they're pretty tight so that everything stays tight. Because if you don't have it enough, it will loosen itself up. So I think this is probably pretty good. And I'm gonna tighten it all the way down, but not super snug, so that the cranks and everything are good. But then now we can go to the pinch bolts, which I want to give you a close-up on. And these pinch bolts are 5 mil and they're titanium. And this is where you just tighten these down and this locks everything in place. So I just wanted to give you a close-up on what this looks like, and I'm realizing that this close-up makes it really hard to tighten, so let's go back out. All right, so we can literally just keep going with this, just making sure that the pinch bolts on these cranks are tightened down so that we lock our system in place. And now, rather than tightening down as much as we need to on these bolts to get everything to stay tight, it stays tight because of the pinch bolts. And as soon as I put my other pedal on, which I forgot a little bit in this process, we're going to be able to find out how well crank flips are going to work, which is something that got me really, really excited, honestly, whenever I read that comment, because I love double crank flips, but when the cranks are too tight, even with the spacer in between the bearings, it just made the crank flips not spin as good. It makes sense. If you keep it locked down, it can't spin as well. So I'm really pumped to be able to hopefully do some double crank flips. I'm going to raise tomorrow and we're gonna find out. So, oh yeah, that's sick. Everything is tight. There's no wobble anywhere. And whoosh, there's 1, 2, 3. Is that 3? 1, 2. No way. I don't think I'm gonna be able to do 3, but the fact that 2 should work easier makes me really, really stoked. And there they are, the RNC V2 aluminum cranks on my bike. Let's give a little bit of a glamour shot look at it here while I'm talking. The price tag on these is $200 for the entire set. Note that they're available with a 19, a 22, or a 24 millimeter 48 tooth spindle. They're spline drive only, meaning left or right side will work, but there's no bolt hole for your sprocket bolt. It has to use the adapter with the sprocket of your choice that will work with it. And there are a ton of color options to go with these, as well as a bunch of spindle size and length options here. So there's 4 different spindle length options. For BMX, it's between 5.625 and 6 inches for the spindle length. I personally have a 6. I would recommend this for BMX personally, unless you know you have a skinny bottom bracket. You wanna make sure you have enough there for you to work with. And then there's mountain bike sizes, as well as a 24 millimeter European spindle size. And when it comes to the spindle size, I wanna make sure that I stress here that this 24 millimeter is different than BMX's 24 millimeter. The BMX one is smaller, meaning that the bottom bracket that you buy for any other BMX company's 24 mil cranks will not work on this. And if you have that and plan to use it, you will need to pick one up with your purchase from RNC. And speaking of purchase, you can save 10% on yours with the code Brant and help me out at the same time. And then I wanted to make sure as well to give you guys a list of the colors. There's so many color options here, I have to read the list. Raw, that's what these are. Black, red, gold, blue, green, fluorescent pink, purple, yellow, turquoise, and orange. That's a ton of options, but with that being said, this has been the in-depth talk about the V2 aluminum cranks from RNC BMX while I install them. Stay tuned for the first ride and first impressions riding them video. And thank you RNC for sending me these to make videos on and test. Thank you for watching. Make sure you use that discount to save yourself some money when you pick these or anything else up from RNC. And hopefully we'll see you tomorrow for another video. Goodbye.